Welcome everybody. Today is all about social investment. So I'm particularly excited and very pleased to have Melanie Mills, who is the Senior Director of the Social Sector at Big Society Capital. So hello Melanie, welcome, and lovely to have you with us today. I know you have a very busy diary. And we also have Fode Mahmed, hopefully I've pronounced that correctly for you. And that's ACH Integrates, which is a refugee and displaced persons resettlement provision within community. Fascinating story when I was researching today and our speakers on the panel. So really looking forward to hearing more from yourself. And also Sarah. So hello Sarah from Grow Organic. I know Grow Organic have listened to their journey through social enterprise status from you starting volunteering in your local community, sort of helping people with gardens, etc. And actually a very, very sustainable social enterprise now. So looking forward to a panel conversation, and Melanie very kindly will be our chair for that panel. So really, I guess, to introduce Melanie a little bit, obviously fantastic role at Big Society Capital, and we'll talk about their role within the social enterprise sector in just a moment. But you've previously led Social Enterprise West Midlands very successfully from kind of a spin-out startup in the social enterprise sector when there was a sort of a funded project. And actually made it into a very well recognised, fully acknowledged sustainable social enterprise supporting Birmingham and the whole of the West Midlands through really a kind of like quite a key phase in terms of social enterprise becoming a known phrase, people becoming more aware of social enterprises and actually the impact they could have through purchasing goods and services. So, but what I really, really know about you is that you're an incredible baker of cakes. So I'm sure lockdown maybe has been a good one for you, has it? Baking plenty of cakes?
Been a lot of cake making going on in my house, yeah.
Fantastic. Also, I know that you've always had a really long-standing interest in sort of ethical businesses that goes way, way back to your very, very early retail career in actual fact. But I think really it was no surprise in terms of Big Society Capital and you joining the team there, because you've loved that ethical business, but always kind of got to grips with the numbers within business. And you know, social enterprises are just another business structure, a very important one, very much a growing sector. But we have to be sustainable businesses first, don't we? So we really do need to get those numbers in place and be viable enterprises before we can go out there and do the good stuff. And just sort of share with us a little bit about Big Society Capital and some of the really good stuff that they do across the sector.
Sorry, do you want me to do that, Sally?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I was kind of, you know, I could rattle on about it, but I think it comes a bit more from the heart from yourself.
Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, so it's an interesting one, this, because most of the stuff I do, I don't talk about Big Society Capital. I mean, and I do remember, I can't believe it's been 5 years, but when I look back, and I remember when I first went to Big Society Capital, and it was like, yeah, I work for Big Society Capital, we have £600 million worth of dormant bank account money. Yeah, we're not a bank, we can't lend it to you. And I remember people thinking, well, what have you come for then, Mel? You know, tell me something useful that you could actually do for us. So most of the time that I've spent at Big Society Capital, I've spent either trying to engage, educate, explain what it is, what it isn't, when it will work, when it won't. There was and still remains an awful lot of myth and misconception and mis-selling of what social investment perhaps was the sector thought it was going to be. And then the other thing is, along with Emily and Manpreet and some other people within my team, we spent quite a lot of time trying to pull together what are, we think, practical and useful resources that can help social enterprises, charities and voluntary community sector organisations explore whether social investment is right for them. So what we're trying to do, in a nutshell, is give you access to all the tools in your toolbox. And we, you know, as I say, it isn't a sales campaign. It isn't to get you to think that social investment is the best thing since sliced bread. It's so that you can make an informed decision as to whether it's right for you. Probably one of the most common questions I get asked is it worth it? And so having enough information for you to, with your board of trustees or your non-exec directors, to make the balance between the risk, putting the extra effort in, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into due diligence. Is all of that worth the impact that you will create at the end? And that's what I'm really hoping, that rather than me wittering on, which I'm more than happy to do, those who know me, is that I get Fuad and Sarah to tell you about their experiences, their organisations, how they've used social investment, sort of the tips, the challenges, and then perhaps we can have some discussion around some of those other questions that I'm guessing, at least knowing some people on here, I'm expecting some challenges and some nice questions to come forward.
Fabulous, thank you. And it really is about social investment, enabling organisations, enabling social enterprises, isn't it, to actually look at, with that investment, how do we create more impact? How does that impact then actually change someone's life at really sometimes quite a granular level? So we might be talking about these millions which have come through from the dormant bank accounts, but actually it's that literally Mrs. Jones at number 13, we can do something that would really change her life, would really support her and make a real difference. So that whole social mobility and building social capital. So just sort of the social investment side of it, in terms of a lot of organisations, particularly within the sector, but a lot of private sector organisations, they're beginning to really link their sort of purpose and their operational drivers and their strategies to the Sustainable Development Goals, so the sort of the UN SDGs. Is that something which has kind of impacted in some of the sort of the conversations with Big Society Capital? Because you had a really interesting innovation article blog that came out Big Society Capital recently as well. So there's some quite big picture stuff there as well.
Yeah, so the organisation I work with definitely does the big picture stuff, you know, and trying to look at how we can use large sums of capital to tackle really challenging social problems. So, you know, if we had another time and moment, or anybody wants to maybe connect with Manpri, he'll tell you all about perhaps women in safe homes and domestic violence and all of the different ways, or things around homelessness and all of those ways that capital could be connected. But you are right, it doesn't have to be at that huge, great big, you know, scale issue. We can talk about small amounts of social investment, and that's probably the thing I'm most passionate about. When I first joined Big Society Capital, and some of you will know this, you know, I actually didn't work for Big Society Capital when they were launched. Remember helping to create, didn't we put on an event in Wolverhampton? The great and the good came, the minister at the time, the chief exec, they announced it, and I thought, that's all great, but that's not the type of money we need. And so, you know, what I'm really interested in is how do we make social investment work better? And I mean, there's been a huge shift across the 5 years. In terms of the SDGs, or, you know, social investors are social because they want to create impact and change, however you happen to measure that. We have a tool on Good Finance, which I'm responsible for, which is a digital platform to help social enterprises and charities navigate this space. And we have a really handy free tool on there called the Outcomes Matrix, which is can be tailored to your individual organisation. I've actually used it in a couple of volunteer roles, nothing to do with my day job. That's had over 45,000 individual downloads and usage. And, you know, it's a whole big topic, but yes, being able to demonstrate the real change or the real impact that getting capital to flow through is really the aim. It isn't about social investment for social investment's sake. Honestly, don't tell my boss. I mind you, I've got 2 members of staff on, so it's not good, is it? But and you're going to put on YouTube, so it's fine. Tell my boss. I don't care about social investment. I care about the impact that social investment can create.
Okay, so that really sort of blends really, really nicely into the segue when we were talking about setting the session up and how to frame it. Your kind of key question that I always ask our expert speakers to kind of put one out there for us was, how social is social investment? So, and I guess that question has also really influenced the 2 chief execs, founders that you've kind of brought into the conversation today, the panel conversation that you're going to lead for us. So would you like to introduce them perhaps? And
I definitely would. It's a perfect segue, that is, because I'm definitely hoping. I have to admit that, as I say, Ashley Community Housing is an organisation that I know relatively well, but I was privileged to be on a webinar that we were supporting, and Fab was speaking, and I remember thinking, oh, that's brilliant, I need to capture some of that. So delighted to welcome Fuad, who's the Chief Exec of Ashley Community Housing. Invited him along today, particularly as Ashley Community Housing have been a real innovator in this space, and I think perhaps not enough people know that social enterprises and charities can actually help develop and deliver new products that have to come the way that the social investors want them to. And also I was really struck with some of the things that Fab was sharing around his relationship with his investors and over the pandemic, how those have unfolded. And I think that might go a little bit to the how social is social investment, which is another top question I get asked all the time, and I'll definitely circle back to. And then I also wanted to bring Sarah, who's CEO of Chief Exec of Grow Organic, in as somebody who's taken on social investment, you know, recently during a pandemic, which other people would say, really, is that something that I would consider? And so, you know, having known Sarah and being honest, right from the beginning of setting up and volunteering and seeing Grow on its journey, I thought this was a great way to sort of get to this topic and get her to share her journey. So yeah, I think that's probably a place to start. Great. So Fred, welcome. Thank you for giving up your time to come along today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I really enjoy conversations around investment and how investment can be made accessible to small organizations. As you have said quite rightly, have been working on the last 3 years how that can be made accessible to some of the communities that we work with. But before I speak about that, let me take a couple of steps back. iSE, the organization I work with, works with refugees and minority communities. So I started the organization in 2012, and what I want to share with you, when I started the organization, similar to me, many other refugees and minority communities and even migrants, usually when they want to start a business, have issue with finance. That is on many different levels. Some of it is because they don't have the financial background, financial history to take credit. Some of it is because they don't understand the system, the business plan, and the information which the banks ask. Some of it is because the finance currently, I think it's in many banks in the UK, it's not accessible to this community. In other words, the interest-bearing loan. So what I want to share with you is, you know, at the beginning of the journey of actually community housing, how I actually financed the ACH is how many other organizations on the street is in Bristol, London, Birmingham, and etc. finance, and that's by using a non-traditional finance. So it is actually there's a something we call hagbed, which means sharing money within the community, and you know, groups of people to raise you know, finance. So that's at the beginning of my story how investment and finance had impact on me. You know, it was quite difficult for not having, you know, much business background, business finance, to raise any money from a bank. So fast forward to 2016-17, when we wanted to raise money to buy properties. Actually, community housing have over 200 properties across the country. Most of our properties are leasehold. So strategically, the organization have decided to move away from leasehold to ownership. And for that to happen, we actually needed, this is going back to Melanie, to your question, we did not seek social investment for fund or because everybody else is doing it, but we had to get investment to move away from the model based on leasehold property to one of ownership. And many other small charities are similar to that, where they want to move, buy their own office or start new services. So for that to happen, Melanie, we went out to, we did not want to go get commercial loans. We wanted to get social investment. And to my surprise, ladies and gents, I want to share with you, in 2016, 2017, there was no way in the country that we could find what I call Sharia compliant or halal social investment. UK is one of the leading Islamic finance in the whole world, and it was very disappointing to know that that mechanism did not exist. So we, at the time, there was government funding, which to all of us here, I would hope that we advocate to get that funding back, investment readiness funding, and many other small charities out there need that funding, to be honest, to be able to be ready, to seek finance. So just quickly, I don't want to dwell too much on this. We could not get most of the social investors out there to fund Sharia compliant. So we within, it took us over 2 years working with lawyers, working with investors, and I have to say some have been nice and welcoming and etc. And some of the investors, their boards and etc. have been very skeptical, rightly or wrongly, about what is this mechanism, how would it work, and what is the advantage, the cost, the implications, and everything. So after 2 years and after spending £100,000, of which most of it actually have been coming from the investment readiness fund, but some of our own money, we have prepared what we call yield sharing mechanism, which is not actually only for the Islamic community, but this is an ethical investment mechanism. And I'm happy to let you know this is actually a very popular at the moment in the city. Many other organizations are using basically all it means is profit sharing mechanism. So I'm happy to take any questions about that. But the key thing I have learned is that the road to getting social investment is not easy. As Melanie says, you need to know, what are the reasons for it. If you know why you need it, one thing actually I'm very negative, and I say all the time, small organizations are afraid generally of social investment. I think that's wrong. Grant making or grant facilities or contracts, we all know, it's a very difficult period for the government, with monies and everything else. Social investment should be one of the options we look at to have social impact on the people that we work with, as such that we cannot ignore. So we have to work with it. If that is the case, then the question I would be happily want to explore with you this afternoon would be, how could we make that more accessible to us, to the smaller organizations? Is that okay to start with, Melanie?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. I would definitely just want to ask you one question, which is just, let's just top on the bit about how social is social investment. And, for the people that are here, I think you made a great point there, Fred. I've made a note. And it's about risk, right? So I often get people saying, social investment, you've got to pay it back with interest. It's really risky. And you made this great point, and I've heard this made lots of times. Is it any more risky if you do all of the preparation for it than taking on a grant that you can't fulfill, or taking on a contractor assistant that could be clawed back, or actually having no sight of income? These are all sort of areas of risk that you have to consider. And I'm absolutely with you, speaking my language, that social investment is another tool for you to consider. And so being able to understand when it's right, when it's wrong, and not being scared of it, and not thinking it's only for big organizations, and seeing that the transformative place that it can have in your organization. I've got a couple of really good key case studies that can really illustrate that. But let's just go back to this how social is social investment. You've taken on effectively a form of repayable finance, got to be repaid, in your case yield sharing, and as you say, helped to innovate something that worked for you. What happens when a pandemic strikes? None of us perhaps thought we were going to be in this situation this year. I hope none of us thought we were going to be in this situation. And you don't have sight of all the things that you predicted were going to happen, and the income's going to change, and your business is going to change. What do you do when you have conversations with your social investors, and how did they react?
Very good question. Thanks, Mel, about that. So with when the COVID-19 happened, nobody prepared for this. We didn't know it will happen. We moved into the office. We were very excited around Feb time, moving to our newly invested office and planning services as usual. So when the pandemic started, we worried like everybody else about our cash flow, how we would be able to pay back the social investment. We were worried about how we have to remodel our business from one that was, say, class-based, face-to-face based, to one that's digital. So we needed a lot of investment to change how we worked. And part of that actually have been to renegotiate or negotiate with our investors and say, first of all, could we delay something, payments due to you now? That's number one. Number two, could you help? I have to say we are very privileged with the 3 or 4 that we're working. 2 of them have approached us before we have approached them, and they actually have given us the permission to delay any payments due to them. And we're talking about both capital and administration or profit sharing, or in another language, interest payments due to them for a year. So that was absolutely fantastic. It did not stop there. Some of the conversations we had have been, how is the pandemic impacting on the communities that we work with? We work with refugees, newly arrived communities, black and ethnic minority. It's again well publicized the fact that this community have been hit hard the most. And I've actually written a paper about how businesses on, for example, Bristol on Stapleton Road, at least there's 500 small retail businesses which completely had to close, and next day, because they haven't had much financial resilience, would not have much to eat to do. Again, I have friends and family who drive Uber. There's a couple of thousand of them in Bristol. I'm sure same in your cities. They were out of work on day one, and all of a sudden it was too much to navigate through the news coming from the government and what the government can do for them, and etc. Where could they get for help? So we went back to the investors. This is just a wide impact, nothing to do with their investment. And we said, there are huge challenges, and we want to work with the people who are directly impacted on your investment, which are the people who are residents on the tenants that you have, the properties that you have invested, but also the wider community. Is speaking about the Uber drivers, the small retail shops who completely had to close down with not much financial resilience. What do you do? The 3 of them have given us grant money, but all that together, I think it comes around £100,000. From that money, Melanie, we have distributed 2,000 tons of food to individuals, bringing something to eat 3 times a day. Some uncooked food, cooked food. This is across Bristol and across West Midlands. We have distributed over 400 tablets to make sure people can have digital access so that they can start looking for work, or actually just relationships and social links. So is social investment social? I think what I've just explained shows people who are going beyond their investment, looking at the communities, their investments impact, having, and the for me, the most satisfying thing have been that I have been invited to some of the boards of these major charities. I can give you some of the examples. Barra Cadbury, I haven't been to Barra Cadbury board, but some of the organizations that have invested us, I'm happy to share. Barra Cadbury, Choice of Frontry Foundation, and etc. So some of them have, invited me to talk to their board about what's happening on the ground, to share how the pandemic is affecting the communities on the ground. So are they interested to make an impact? My answer is 100% yes. But this is business. And I think one thing I will conclude with this, Melanie, one thing the charity sector is keep forgetting is that even though you're doing good, and the social investment sector recognizes that you're doing good, at the end of the day, you have to present a business case that makes sense. And if your numbers do not add up, and this is where I think many smaller charities need the investment readiness help, you will not get social investment, or you will be scared of social investment. And if you don't get it, there will be, or you are rejected, then there will be the assumption that they are, some of my colleagues have both corporate and profit driven, which in my experience haven't been the case. Thank you.
Fantastic, Fiona. Just brilliant takeaways there, you know, in terms of the fact that, you know, yes, it's money you have to pay back with interest. Nobody is disputing that fact. But the fact that, because I often think when people say is social investment, what they mean is, does that mean it's cheap, free, or it's grant? And the answer is no to any of those things. But you've really well described one of these. We have these 7 lessons learned that peers from around the country sort of share, these great little snippets. And one of them is that when you take on social investment, it's about more than money. And I think what you've really done there is explained how, you know, a social investor, first of all, won't lend you the money if they don't think that's the right thing for your organisation. The last thing they want to do is send your business out of business. They don't want to have to foreclose. You know, that's not where they are. And they will do everything in their power to try to stop that from happening. So they'll do their homework. But the bit about you said you need to do yours is also really, really key. And it's great. I think that's the other bit. So I often say to people, you know, we're not going to say to you, don't go to the high street banks. You know, it may be that the money's cheaper from them. What you need to think about is, in a situation like this, when your back is against the wall and you need flexibility, do you need somebody who cares as much about the impact as you do? And that piece you talked about finding the right partner, I know that I often quote him, and I think he's not on the call, but I often quote Martin Hogg from Citizen Coaching, told me he had to kiss an awful lot of social investment frogs before he found his social investment prince, which what I think he means is you go find, you know, not so all social investors do the same thing. You've got to find the right one that will work with you for your outcomes. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Fred. We're going to come back to you in a minute. Sarah, let's talk about grow, shall we? So what it would be great to hear from you, Sarah, is a little bit about where Grow started, what you do and journey to date, how and why social investment has become, you know, right for your organisation, and, you know, yeah, how you came to take it on during a pandemic and what you're going to do next. You're on mute, Sushma.
There we go. Sorry, I keep forgetting. Yeah, so it was back in 2010 when my journey started, and I'd hate to lead anybody on by thinking that it was this great idea that I had, and I started to, you know, to plan for a business, because it absolutely wasn't that. I was in a really difficult place myself at the time. I'd had to leave an organisation because my mental health wasn't very good. I'd gone actually from earning quite a good salary to literally being on benefits overnight, and that impacted me. And I also lived on an estate in Chelmsley Wood at the time, where I'd got a lot of my friends around me, but we went through this huge regeneration, which was just awful, because it meant that a lot of us got split up and separated, and I just felt that my whole infrastructure around me was just completely breaking down. And then I remember thinking, my mum said, you know, just try and take yourself to a, you know, to a nice space, a happy space, something that you can just try and think of that you remember from your childhood or whatever, that might just, you know, get you feeling well and better again. And I just remembered planting tomatoes with my granddad in a greenhouse when I was 6, and the feeling of calm that I had doing that. And I thought, you know, I'm going to start growing food again, and I'm going to start trying to get back out in the garden. So I'd kind of asked a couple of neighbours that I'd lived with, do you want me to come and do your garden? Do you want to do some food growing with me? And they agreed, and we started doing this like every Friday. And then one lady came over and she said, oh, we've got a real bad situation over here. She said, there's a lady on this grove. She's going to get evicted, you know, if she doesn't sort a garden out. Is there any way you can help her? So me and my 2 friends got together, got some tools in a carrier bag, because we haven't got any money to buy equipment. And off we went to this lady's house, and we did quite a good job. And then the next week, I had somebody else come and say, oh, did you do so-and-so's garden? You wouldn't mind coming and have a look at mine, would you? So it basically started off a little bit like this, until one day I realised I'd set up quite a significant gardening club that had over 65 volunteers attending every week. that they'd stand at the bottom of our road, all with the tools and stuff. And that was how we started. And we literally just went round the estate, finding people that needed help, that couldn't afford help, to help transform their gardens for them. It was just amazing watching people, when they've got that extra space and they look out and their garden looks nice, it gives them a real sense of belonging, and they feel, you know, that they value the property more. But what I really realised was we were actually pulling people together from all different walks of life that had never been possible or had never really been done on Chelmsley Wood before. So I was watching those kids that would be the, you know, the hooded kids that usually kind of spend weekends graffitiing the bus stops. They were coming to me saying, oh, you know, they were using drills and saws and they were making planters, and it was just a phenomenal thing to watch how all of these communities that people said, oh, they could never, you know, work together or live together or help each other. They were all coming together, and we were doing this regularly. And it was just by pure chance that I knocked one of the ladies that needed help. Her daughter worked for the Prince's Trust, and she was in the house that day. And she said, oh, I've seen what you're doing, and I think it's absolutely amazing. She said, you know, are you a company? Or, and I said, well, no, and actually it's a bit worrying because, you know, I haven't got any health and safety policies, and all these people are turning up and I'm telling them what to do. But what if something happens to one of them? You know, am I going to be in trouble? I said, come to the Prince's Trust and we'll see if we can help you. So cut a long story short, I completed the Prince's Trust Enterprise Programme in 2010. And they gave me £1,500 to get some branding and to leaflets and a bit of a website, which is the Grow Organic branding. So fast forward slightly, I think overall our objects have always been to improve the mental and physical and emotional well-being and the life opportunities for people. Because I think what I was witnessing was actually when you give people the right space and the right places and the right encouragement and environment, the people that were saying to that couldn't come out of their houses, you know, they're now leading teams of 20 and 30 for me at a time. You know, so I just think it was about, for us, it's just about improving their opportunities in and across the communities, and really providing services, you know, that reduce isolation and loneliness, and giving communities, you know, empowering them so that they can continue to support each other and rely less upon us. So now, you know, we mentor in schools and out in the community. We do early intervention services with the police because we found that a lot of young people actually just need a bit of a, you know, a helping hand into getting into education or employment. So we're now a registered college as well. We've got over 280 volunteers who actively go out and, you know, improve the communities. And I think you can see our little crown there. Is it this way? I'm mirrored. They've won the Queen's Award as well for voluntary service, which was phenomenal. So, you know, I think our volunteering continues, but obviously for any business to be sustainable, you know, we had to make sure that we were getting paid for services. And I think what happened for me was I came to a point, probably this journey for me actually has been quite long, but that is not the fault, that's not a fault. I actually see it as a really good thing, because 18 months ago, I got speaking with Grace from Resonance, and she came out to see me, and, you know, we were talking about, you know, what opportunities there were for me to grow the business. And the opportunities that I had then actually aren't what the investment is for now. Some of it has stayed the same, but actually what happened for us was, I felt, it's interesting you were talking about, you know, not every investor's right for you. I didn't just have a meeting with Grace. I won't name the other people, but we had a meeting with a fair few people, but nobody quite got us the way that Resonance got us. I really felt that they weren't just interested in, yes, of course, they're interested in how you're going to pay. You know, we need to make sure the money is repayable, that you understand the business model, that you have the business plan. But the impact on the communities was really, really important. So we had to really kind of demonstrate that as well. And I think what I felt through this journey is, it's not just somebody who's giving you a repayable investment. For us, we felt they were part of our business. it was almost like she was an extra member of staff in a way, because it was like we felt like we had a partner. So it was a partnership, but it was a partnership. It was like my critical best friend. And that for me was exactly what I needed, because I'd been to banks and a lot of the banks had said, yeah, you know, you can have this money, but there wasn't anybody supporting me through that process. It was kind of like, I suppose it was really like a tick box. You know, they were just looking at, you know, can you afford it? What have you got coming in? What have you got going out? Whereas I felt that the investors really worked with us to adapt the areas of our business and respond to the need that we had at this time. And I think by being challenged and being questioned made us think as a board and as a group, and we were able to go back to our community and say, look, actually these people that are potentially investing in us have actually raised some questions and some things here that we need to consider as a community. So they were involved in that process. And you know, I think our investment now is actually predominantly to scale mentoring and family support, but also our landscaping as well. But yeah, I just feel like it's been, you know, we've been supported, you know, and backed, which is great. But I think this thing about not having to pay the loan, just pay the interest first, for us was like, it kind of relieves that immediate pressure. So I think there's quite a lot of benefits for us that we felt this is actually really going to give us the time that we need, you know, to really get that catalyst going and start making our commercial sales.
Fantastic, thank you, Sarah. There's so many of these. Sally's been brilliantly capturing these golden nuggets, and I've also just popped in these 7 lessons which you know come through quite a lot in terms of things that you've said. One of the things that you've talked about there is you know, one of the characteristics of your loan is that you've got it's a type of patient capital, which, let's face it, everybody wants it to be patient, because that means it takes a bit longer if we have to pay it back. But there's a particular mechanism that's a feature in your type of investment, so a particular tax relief. It's called social investment tax relief, and residents use it to bring private investors in. The investor has to keep their money in for at least 3 years, but in most of the cases, the residents, it's 6 years, and it means that they're not allowed to ask for their capital back for the first 3 years. They can only ask for interest. I'm flagging this because social investment tax relief is due for review on April the 5th next year. A large part of my work and Emily's work is lobbying government like crazy, trying to work out how it all works with Treasury. So, you know, if you want to lobby your MP, if you want to find out more about social investment tax relief, perhaps Emily will pop in the link around SITR. You know, this is a fundamental tax relief. It could be much better, could be easier to use. I was on a conference this morning with the Minister at MPC Ignites, and you know, she was remarking on the fact that during this pandemic, private savings will potentially increase to £82 billion, you know, more disposable income, because people just haven't been able to go out. So we have to find ways to get private investors to be able to invest that money, particularly into social enterprises and charities, and social investment tax relief is one of the ways that they can do that. So, I mean, it's really interesting, Sarah, when you talk about your journey, you know, and I think there was a point in the pandemic when I think everybody was so, you know, busy, heads down, trying to work to react to work out what our communities needed. But there was a sense, I think, sometimes that I think people thought, well, nobody's going to want to borrow money that you have to pay back. So that must mean that all the social investors are sat around with their feet on the desk and nothing to do. I wish, because yeah, honestly, I'm not saying that we were at the front, at the sharp end like you are, but, you know, those things that Fawad was talking about, how can we make sure that no social enterprise or charity feels that they're in a situation where they have to choose between repaying their loan and actually doing something else. And one of the things that Good Finance did was put out a little animation that said, number 1, talk to your investor. Number 2, they're expecting your call. Number 3, nobody should be put in that position. Tell us if you are. And as Big Society Capital is one of the biggest suppliers of wholesale capital, you know, obviously what we say to the investors who are lending to you, you know, sets the precedent, really. So it was really good to hear that. The other thing that I thought, there was probably a moment, say around May, June, when I wondered how much this would set us back in terms of, you know, how much more appetite would there be for social enterprises or charities to want to do more of this stuff. I'm not worried about that at all now. We still have as many organisations visiting Good Finance to get information. We have plenty of people turning up to events, Let's Talk Good Finance, to talk more about this. And we launched our first distance learning, supported learning tool called Social Investment Unpicked. And we did it in August, thinking that, you know, that'd be quiet time, and, you know, hopefully it's mainly designed to help capacity building organisations. So great that you said, Fred, about, you know, investment readiness. So it was designed to try and help consultants and infrastructure organisations better signpost and at least support people to find out information. In fact, Manpre's worked on this. And instead of us getting the sort of minimum 12 people that we wanted to run it, we had 93 expressions of interest and ran 2 cohorts. And we're, yeah, we've got the next 3 cohorts booked up. So if ever I was sort of thinking there might not be appetite for this stuff. So what I wanted just to do now is I'm really keen to get some questions from everybody, because you've shared some fantastic insights so far. So if anybody's got any questions that they want to pop in the in the chat, they can. But I'm also conscious we're quite a small group, so I might actually be able to hear from people.
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy. I know, as you said at the beginning, Melanie, there'll be a couple of people. I'm sure, Carol, you're always, again, always interested in the financing side. How's this funding coming through? How's it supporting the sector, the locality, the regions, kind of thing? Is there perhaps anything? I know you've got sort of quite a lot of interests across both Coventry and Birmingham at the moment. So how does sort of social investment look for you, I guess, with the different areas that you're working in?
Yeah, thanks for that. I love being on the spot. Yeah,
it's a cosy conversation amongst friends.
That's not a problem. I think I've just put something in there about the combined authority.
Yes.
We really did push, as part of the social economy report, the 6 recommendations, and one of those is to look at social investment and to actually make it really applicable. We got the combined authority mayor to support that and send a letter to Rishi Sunak at the beginning of lockdown. That was when we knew what was happening with Citra. So we're on it as part of that group. I tend to sit with a number of hats, which you're quite right. And social investment I found very difficult. From my own perspective, when I had my own social enterprise, I went through the full process of doing social investment. I actually had it in my hands, and then we decided as a board, because we didn't get the match funding to go with it, that we wouldn't take that investment on board, and that was the right decision to make. So I know how difficult it is to actually go through the whole process and then pull it, and then I did close the business. And again, it was the right thing to do. So one of the questions I want for Mel, and she can probably answer this, Coventry lost out on the local access fund. So I wanted to know, because I know Bristol and maybe Foward will know a little bit about this. Bristol, I think, actually got to take part in that. So I just wondered, how has that gone over the last year? Because obviously we lost out end of last year, beginning of this year. I just wanted to know, has it been taken on board? Because I see that fear with the social enterprises I work with, slightly different for if they've been established for more, you know, the 10 years plus. But under 3 years, I see a real reluctance, and especially now with COVID, to take on social investment, and they'll go for the easier grant option. And I want to encourage people, if they really, you know, believe in their business and they've gone through all the due diligence, and great points there, how do we encourage them to take that risk and develop and grow their business?
Okay, right. So I'm going to do a little bit of context first. So local access is a program that is delivered by our sister organisation, which is the Access Foundation, and it is a place-based investment fund. So we had 12 different localities that bid for this investment fund in it, and the investment fund will be part grant to do some of the building of business models and the introduction of a fund. The progress, the awarded areas, which as you say include Bradford, Bristol, Gainsborough in Lincolnshire, can I remember all 6, probably come to me in a minute, the others. Basically what's happened is that the progress has slowed slightly at those organisations' request because of the pandemic, but also to work out beyond the pandemic what's the best use of that money. So the beauty of local access is nobody's telling you what to do with it. In fact, it probably speaks a little bit to what Fuad said when he was trying to find out this, couldn't find this Sharia compliant. One of the things I've observed is that sometimes the power imbalance feels a bit odd. So, big investment, lots of very academic people. I feel like that every day, a little bit out of my depth sometimes. But actually, it is social enterprises and charities. It's that willingness for the people to listen, like Fuad said, when they want to hear about what's happening, that actually help to drive new products and what new funds look like. So local access is still happening, Carol. Bristol's a little bit further ahead than some of the others, but we'll be able to pick up the story on that again next year. In terms of the places that weren't successful, the question I have, and we were talking about this internally, is I think one of the best ways that we can help, again, speaks to some probably things that both Brad and Sarah have said. One of the things that I hope that we can do is to give better support to the social enterprises and charities. And one of the ways that we want to help you to be able to tackle that fear of that risk is to give you better knowledge so that you can signpost, so that you can give them peer experience. And if I'm honest, that's what Social Investment Unpicked is designed to do. It's so that somebody in the local VCS organisation, or somebody in the local Social Enterprise Yorkshire and Humber, or somebody in the Small Charities Coalition, or I'm trying to think what other organisations we've got quite a lot of consultants, for instance. When an organisation goes to them and starts talking about their business for the future, they know enough about social investment to be able to put it in. They're not expected to be an expert, but they know enough to make sure that the organisation knows what options they can consider and where to go for help. It is complex, I can say that, 5 years in. It is complicated. We try everything we can do to make it as accessible as possible. You've already given us one great thing today, Fred. I went to Emily, is yield sharing in our Jargon Buster? No, right, get that sorted. But loan variation is, that was the other term you talked about when you go to your investor and say, can I change the way that I've borrowed this money from you? So yeah, we need to try and make it easier for you to understand. The other thing I would say, the best thing is peer sharing experiences. So I'm going to give you an example because we talked a little bit earlier about smaller organisations. I was really pleased to make an award to this organisation. They're based in Yorkshire and Humber a couple of years ago. Why did I give them the award? Because they were a tiny little charity. They had no paid staff. They were all volunteers. They were turning over £13,000 a year. Okay, so this is all quite exceptional stuff. They took on a loan for £95,000, a secured loan. So that's a secured loan like a mortgage. So it's like the least risky type of lending. And they did it so they could buy a piece of land and build 2 small contained bungalows, because their charitable objective in Hudswell, which is a small rural village, is to help older people and younger people have accommodation in their space. They've gone on and done it several more times. But here was an organisation who could bust the myth that you needed to be big and you needed to have lots of people to be able to do this. And I think sometimes it's about showing what's possible. It's about talking about what Grow Organic have done and Sarah and the team have done. It's about talking about what Ashley and Community Housing have done. It's about talking about what Preston Road Women's Centre, which isn't in Preston, always confuses me, it's in Hull. But their chair of their trustees has again pushed back to investors and helped to create a new fund created in Hull and now rolled out across the UK that hopefully will give us a better type of finance for social enterprise and charities. Is it perfect? No. Have we made progress? Yes. Is there more to do? Definitely. Keep it coming.
Thank you, Mel. Manpreet, I think if we could, you had a question that you wanted to ask about the Sharia investment fund. Do you want to ask that, and then we'll kind of use that perhaps as our closing question, unless anybody has a very, very burning need for a further question following that. So is that okay with you, Manpreet? Do you want to ask that question again?
Yes, great. Thanks very much, Sally. Yeah, my question's to Fard. Thank you very much. And also thanks to Sarah for sharing your story. It's really inspiring. My question's around the Sharia compliant investment fund. So I came across this a few months ago, and I just realized how important it is to have that information, you know, reach the communities, because unless you know about it, you're not going to relate to it. You're going to easily dismiss an opportunity that can help you, your organization, from seed to scale. So if you're in a position of putting that information out to communities, how would you go about doing that?
Pleasure to meet with you, Manpreet. I'm glad we share Baljeet as a contact. So looking forward to be contacting with you. With regards to the Sharia compliant, I mean, before I speak about that, in conclusion from me, I think following what Melanie have been saying, it's really important to be brave. If you don't have the social investment you want model out there, please then do not be scared to push back, like the organization Preston or Hull, and create the kind of model that you want. In answering to your question, Manpreet, what can we do? To be honest, this is actually something I'm really keen to explore. So there are two levels. One level is at the ground level, where there are small organizations like the Uber drivers I spoke about, who do not want to go to a commercial bank to get, let's say, £1,000, 1,500, so your smaller loans. How could we make this social investment into more retail oriented? And it needs a bit of work. At some stage, I think about a year ago, I've actually approached Comic Relief, and I'm happy to share to say I really want to work how to make this model much more accessible on the ground. So smaller businesses and social enterprises, and even one-man band organizations, how could they access the loan that they need? They don't have to purely rely on raising finance from family and friends. Now, I haven't made much progress with that, and I'm keen with some of the colleagues here that, you know, this is very timely. If we are to recover from this pandemic, you know, in my view, one of the ways we can do that is to get the businesses going again. And if we are to get businesses going again, it's a well-publicized fact that, you know, migrants, refugees are very entrepreneurial community. So to help that community with the right finance, I believe is the right way, you know, to share this. So more work can be done, Manpreet, and the rest of you. And I'm happy to have a conversation. How can we make that more accessible? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Did that answer your question well enough, Manpreet?
It did, definitely. And I'm going to take up your invitation to have a further conversation in how we can work through this and, yeah, come to some kind of resolution. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to bring this to a close, because I'm mindful that we try to keep these to an hour, and people have busy diaries sort of at the moment, especially, and I really value the hour that you've all come together. Melanie, thank you so much for chairing, for the input, and also for bringing both Sarah and Food to us today, because I think two very, very different stories, absolutely fascinating stories, and I'm sure we all wish both organisations well as they step forward with their social investment, and look forward to hearing those updates. There's been a lot of links and information documents, etc. So I've tried to make a note of those, and I will capture those in the follow-up email. Those that have been with us on a previous webinar, always try and sort of like bring the link for the video to you, as well as some of those additional resources that have been talked about today. So Melanie or Fode or Sarah, if you have anything really sort of specific that you think, oh, that would be great, please do pop it across to me on email, and then I'll include that. We will bring the video to you. This is the final series for or the final webinar in the series for 2020. I think for me, if I can sort of take a step aside and really sort of thank all of the expert speakers that we've actually had. So we've had over 9 webinars since March, when lockdown happened, really as the social enterprise sector support from iSE. And we've had 11 speakers, expert speakers, all have given their time free to the sector, because they're absolutely passionate about supporting the sector through what has been a very, very challenging period of time, summer and as we go into winter. So it's great that those resources are there on our YouTube channel, that people can come back to them. But out of the webinar series, we've actually, we've had 111 individual people kind of come and attend the sessions, but we've delivered about 200 hours of social enterprise sector support through the webinar series. And that is a massive tribute to everybody that's taken their time out. As I said, sort of, you know, Judy and Carol, you've both been very much kind of part of the whole journey, I think, sort of end to end. I remember Martin and I doing the very first one. Melanie, you kindly mentioned Martin earlier. So fantastically fitting, I think, that we've had such a good session, really interesting session. And I think so much that we can kind of take forward, and there will be contact information on the video as well for all of our 3 speakers today. So a huge thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. We're all here. So if there's anything that we can do to help support, and, you know, stay connected, stay well, and stay positive. And I think, Bode, you said it, be brave. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Lovely to talk to you all. Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye.